4 missile salvos struck Tel Aviv in the space of 40 minutes. Not one launch, not two. 4 separate, coordinated waves back to back, designed to do one thing: drain every interceptor battery in central Israel before the final warhead arrived. This was not a random fire. It was pressure, timed and layered to wear down the shield before the real blow landed. Israeli Army radio confirmed explosions ripping across the city. Sirens tore through the night. Civilians ran for shelter. Entire neighborhoods were thrown into confusion in a matter of minutes. Authorities later reported injuries, but no deaths. And that detail matters, because this was not just a story about casualties. It was a demonstration of how quickly a modern air defense system can be pushed toward exhaustion when the attack is built. In parts of the city, the warning systems failed entirely and gave residents 0 seconds to react. A warhead packed with roughly 100 kilograms of high explosive detonated between apartment buildings in central Tel Aviv. Police Superintendent Feda Yaniv confirmed the impact. 6 people were pulled from 4 separate blast sites across the city, while rescue crews searched a collapsed residential block for trapped survivors. Over the next few minutes, I am going to break down exactly how Iran's Sejjil missiles punched through Israel's defense layers, what triggered the blackout across Tel Aviv, and why the IRGC says this is just the beginning. This was not a random barrage. This was wave 80 of a campaign that has not paused for a single day since February 28, 2026. That is the day the United States and Israel launched coordinated strikes on Iran and killed Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei inside his own compound in Tehran. Iran's response was immediate. Operation True Promise 4, a rolling bombardment of missiles and drones that has now averaged more than 3 separate salvos per day for 26 consecutive days. The IRGC is mixing Shekan, Imad, Sejjil, Qadr, and Khorramshahr ballistic missiles with kamikaze drones inside the same wave, cycling weapon types and flight profiles so no single defense layer can catch everything, and roughly 40% of all that fire is landing in one place, Greater Tel Aviv. 4 million people. And we need to talk about the Sejjil specifically because that missile changed this war. Fired in combat for only the 2nd time in history on the 15th of March. Quick before we continue, thanks a lot for tuning in. Your support is what keeps this show going, and I genuinely appreciate you watching. As always, please make sure to subscribe and like the video so I can keep bringing you these updates. So what makes this missile different from everything else Iran has thrown at Israel? The Sejjil 2 is a 2-stage solid-fuel medium-range ballistic missile. It stands 18 meters tall. It weighs 23.6 tons at launch, which makes it 5 to 6 times heavier than the Fatah hypersonic system. Depending on the distance to target, it delivers either a 700-kilogram warhead out to 2,000 kilometers or a 1.5-ton warhead to targets within 1,000 kilometers. Every square meter of Israeli territory falls inside that envelope. And here's the part that should alarm every air defense planner watching this. Solid fuel means no pre-launch fueling window. Liquid fuel missiles like the Shahab 3 sit exposed for several minutes while crews pump propellant into the airframe. That window is when you kill them on the ground. The Sejjil removes that window. It rolls out of a mobile launcher and fires almost immediately. On top of that, analysts call it the dancing missile because its flight path does not follow a clean parabolic curve. It shifts and adjusts during re-entry, which is precisely the behavior designed to defeat Israel's Arrow 3 and David's Sling tracking algorithms. During Wave 54, the IRGC paired the Sejjil 2 with the Khorramshahr, which carries dual warheads, alongside Shekan, Qadr, and Imad missiles in a single mixed salvo. Different speeds, different altitudes, different trajectories, all arriving inside overlapping engagement windows. Sirens screamed across Tel Aviv, Herzliya, and at least 141 additional locations. Fragments struck residential areas and landed near the home of a United States consular official in the city. Towards the end, I will show you how the financial cost of intercepting these salvos is burning through American and Israeli stockpiles at a rate neither country planned for. Now here is where the damage goes beyond warheads and shrapnel. While the world focused on the apartment strikes, Iran simultaneously targeted the backbone of Israel's electricity supply. Ballistic missiles hit the vicinity of the Orot Rabin power station near Hadera, roughly 45 kilometers north of Tel Aviv. This is the single largest power generation facility in Israel. It produces 2,590 megawatts. That is approximately 20% of the entire country's electricity output feeding through one location. The strikes triggered widespread power outages across the Tel Aviv suburbs and surrounding central districts. Eyewitness footage showed entire neighborhoods plunged into complete darkness. Israeli officials refused to confirm the full scope of grid damage, but the disruption to residential and commercial supply was immediate and visible. Additional missiles struck the Bazan Group oil refineries in Haifa Bay, Israel's primary refining complex. Iran had already hit those same refineries with K-bar-Shikan missiles in earlier waves. This is not random targeting. This is repeated pressure on the same energy nodes, testing repair capacity and defensive endurance simultaneously. Most people assume Iran is simply lobbing bigger warheads at Israeli cities, hoping something connects. The reality runs in the opposite direction. Iran is not attempting to flatten Tel Aviv in a single overwhelming strike. It is executing a grinding, infrastructure-focused campaign designed to make central Israel functionally unlivable. Daily bombardment, repeated hits on energy targets, cluster warheads scattering submunitions across residential streets, sirens that fail to activate in time. The objective is not one dramatic explosion. The objective is permanent vulnerability, and here is the proof. Iran's energy minister Abbas Ali-Abadi stated publicly that Iran generates power across more than 150 decentralized plants nationwide. Then he added that Israel and the Gulf states concentrate their production in a small number of facilities that are, in his words, centralized and very vulnerable. The IRGC reinforced that message with a direct warning. If you hit electricity, we hit electricity. That is a doctrinal statement. Iran is telling Israel to its face that the energy asymmetry runs in Tehran's favor and that every strike on Iranian infrastructure will be mirrored against Israeli power generation, where one successful hit removes 20% of national capacity. Stay with me because what the IRGC announced next about Israeli shelters and what the interceptor cost numbers reveal about how long this defense can physically last is the section of this conflict that changes the strategic calculus entirely. On March 24th, the IRGC's intelligence unit declared that Israeli civilian shelters are now legitimate military targets. Not a vague future warning, but a published operational statement on X claiming Iran holds the blueprints, the GPS coordinates, and the structural specifications of Israel's entire shelter network, including the Mamad reinforced rooms built into residential buildings with 20 to 30 centimeters of concrete walls and blast-resistant steel doors. This declaration landed after Iranian missiles struck Dimona and Arad in southern Israel, injuring nearly 200 people, including children, in attacks near Israel's Negev nuclear research area. Israeli military spokesperson Brigadier General Efi Defrin admitted publicly that air defenses activated against the incoming Qadr missiles, but failed to intercept them. David's Sling missed. 180 people paid for that failure, and this was not the first time. On March 1st, an Iranian missile punched straight through two interceptors and struck a communal shelter inside a synagogue in Beit Shemesh, 18 miles from Jerusalem. 9 civilians died, 49 were injured. That single event remains the deadliest strike of the entire war. 2 weeks later, on March 17th, hours after Israel assassinated Iranian security chief Ali Larijani, the IRGC fired cluster munition warheads at central Israel in what it called direct revenge. But one of those warheads hit an apartment building in Ramat Gan, just east of Tel Aviv, killing a couple in their 70s. They were found just outside their reinforced safe room. They were found just outside their safe room after the strike. So when the IRGC says it will target shelters, it is not an empty threat. It is a statement backed by a demonstrated ability to reach them. Now consider the financial dimension, because this is where the arithmetic turns catastrophic. A single Iranian ballistic missile costs between $200,000 and $500,000 to build. An Arrow 3 interceptor, Israel's highest-tier shield, costs between $2 million and $3 million per shot. David's Sling runs approximately $1 million each. The American THAAD system, which Washington has deployed heavily into this theater, costs $13 million per interceptor. Israel is spending between 4 and 26 times more to defend each engagement than Iran spends to attack. Multiply that across 80 waves over 26 days, and the budget becomes unsustainable. A senior Israeli defense official admitted the core problem on the record. Even if production is ramped up now, what you are firing today is what was ordered 2 or 3 years ago. Israel needs significantly more Arrow 3 interceptors. The United States burned through roughly 14% of its entire THAAD stockpile in the first 2 weeks alone. Current production rates deliver about 12 THAAD interceptors per year. Replenishing what was consumed in 14 days would take between 3 and 8 years. That is more than a year of American missile production spent in half a month. Most people think a 92% interception rate means the shield is holding. In reality, it means the 8% that penetrate is landing on schools, apartment blocks, and construction sites week after week. And the interceptors, stopping the other 92%, are being consumed faster than any factory on Earth can replace them. And here's the dimension nobody wants to calculate. The combined interception rate sits at approximately 92%. That sounds strong until you count the 8% that land. Iran has fired around 440 ballistic missiles at Israel since February 28th. 8% of 440 is roughly 35 warheads reaching populated areas. 35 unintercepted impacts across 26 days, carrying either conventional explosives or cluster submunitions that scattered dozens of individual bomblets at 7 to 8 kilometers altitude, forcing Iron Dome to chase each fragment separately. A senior Israeli brigadier general described the system's capability against those cluster warheads with 3 words: better than nothing. That is not confidence. That is a system being asked to do more than it was designed to handle. Meanwhile, the economic shockwave from this war has reached every continent. Before the first strike, Brent crude traded at approximately $72.87 per barrel. As of this week, it has been swinging between $100 and $110. It spiked near $120 in the first 2 weeks. Dubai crude hit an all-time high above $150. Oman crude settled above $152. Commercial shipping through the Strait of Hormuz has been heavily disrupted since early March, hitting a route that carries roughly a fifth of global oil and LNG flows. The International Energy Agency called this the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. Gulf oil production has dropped by at least 10 million barrels per day. The IEA released 400 million barrels from emergency reserves, the biggest such release ever. The United States committed 172 million barrels from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Prices have barely flinched. Now apply that to the interceptor equation. A single Iranian ballistic missile costs between $200,000 and $500,000 to manufacture. A single Arrow 3 interceptor costs $2 million to $3 million. A THAAD interceptor runs $12.7 million each. During the 12-day war in June 2025 alone, the United States burned through an estimated 150 THAAD rounds at a total cost exceeding $1.9 billion. That consumed roughly 14% of the entire American THAAD stockpile. THAAD interceptors cost roughly $12 million to $15 million each, and production is limited enough that the Pentagon is now moving to expand output. Reports on the June 2025 fighting estimated the U.S. fired roughly 100 to more than 150 THAAD interceptors in a very short time. This current war has now lasted more than double that duration. Estimates put Israel's daily defense expenditure at up to $200 million, and the secondary effects are spreading far beyond fuel. Analysts say urea and other nitrogen fertilizer prices could roughly double if the war drags on, because disruption in and around Hormuz is choking a major share of the global fertilizer trade. Brazil, which supplies nearly 60% of global soybean exports, depends on fertilizer shipments that transit the Strait of Hormuz. California gasoline crossed $5 per gallon during the second week of March. This is not a war contained within a region anymore. It is repricing the global economy in real time. There have been 80 waves in 26 days, Sejjil missiles reaching Israeli territory in under 7 minutes. Khorram Shah warheads scattering 80 bomblets across 10 kilometers that no defense system on Earth can fully stop once deployed. Safed Base, the command hub for